And then shortly after that, my husband got appointed elder. And then all of a sudden, I had newfound friends.
Welcome back to my channel. Wendy Renee here. So excited to have you back. Our next guest is Laura. And when I tell you Laura's story, we don't really talk about what elders' wives go through. And sometimes an elder's wife can say, well, I'm an elder's wife, so I'm the foremost authority. Or they almost wear it like it's a badge of honor in that their identity gets wrapped up in being the wife of an elder. And we see that all the time in society. My husband has prestige. My husband has a position of power. My husband has a big fancy job. And sometimes his wives, they can get caught up in that. But in the Jehovah's Witness organization, there is a specific kind of, I am the wife of so-and-so, I'm a circuit overseer's wife, I'm a pioneer's wife, I'm an elder's wife. Because along with that comes certain standards that women have to measure up to. So in her story, I hope you find yourself. So let's go. Before we begin, I want to thank you so much, like always, for liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel. With every subscriber, it just means more and more people are becoming aware of the fact that there is life and happiness and joy on the other side of narcissistic abuse and high control religion. Don't forget, we have that little community over there on TikTok where we have interesting conversations in the comment section. And I'm also on Instagram where I blog and I get really wordy if you're interested in reading. Laura, so excited to have you on our show to tell your story. So give us a little bit of backstory. First, you can start with how long were you baptized? And yeah, the floor is all yours.
Well, I was born and raised in the Jehovah's Witness organization, and I was baptized at the age of 11. I was one of the first kids in the Kingdom Hall that I was raised to be baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And basically that set the tone for my entire life, being baptized that young. And not really, it didn't really click that once you get baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you're ultimately signing your life away, and you can't get out of it with your dignity intact. There isn't any way to get out of it. As for my history, this kind of goes back into the history of my maternal grandmother, my mom's mom, who was studying to become a Catholic nun. Are they Catholic? I believe so. Yes, she was studying to become a nun, and one of her fellow sisters were studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. She ended up studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's how she ended up coming into the organization, bringing all of her children. My mother got baptized at the age of 16, and she met my father in the world because she left after getting baptized. And after getting married and settling down, she started coming back into the organization, and that's when all the problems started. Both of my parents were born and raised in Togo. So I'm the first generation born here in the United States. There is a bit of abuse in my story. When I was a baby, my parents sent me back to Africa at the age of 8 months old, where I stayed with my maternal grandmother and my aunt. And unfortunately, I was sexually abused as a child while I was in Africa. I came here when I was 5. There were 2 instances of the abuse. One from a younger child, the second instance from a man much older than me. They didn't know about the one that happened with the man that was much older than me until much, much later. My grandmother came along with my little brother and I back to the United States. So basically, we joined my parents here in the United States when I turned 5 and my brother was 3. My aunt and my grandmother would often leave me home with my uncles, and they would bring their friends by. And their friends were a mix of witnesses and non-witnesses. I don't know if the man who abused me was a witness. I can't say for sure, but it definitely is something that has marked me to this very day, because it makes me kind of sad and a little bitter that they didn't protect me more than they should have. You know, I was a whole continent and ocean away from my parents. You know, I should have been protected more.
Religion or not, spot on with your facts, by the way, spot on.
Yeah.
So now you're exposed now to the organization. You get baptized at 11, which I can relate to that. And so what was life like for you as a baptized witness? Because you're 25 now, right? 25. Yes. So you get through your teen years, you go through school. I believe you mentioned you also had been a pioneer as well.
I remember my grandmother and my mother reading me the book of Bible stories every night before going to sleep. I remember them reading me Learn from the Great Teacher. My father was deeply opposed to us being in the religion. I never really understood why, because unfortunately my mother vilified my father in front of us three kids, and we never understood him. We were scared of him. We didn't want to be near him. And this was up until he left when I was 14. So my childhood happened. My mom would always be dragging us to the meeting, even on school nights. You come home from school, supposed to eat, you take a nap, you go to the meeting, and
Yeah.
then you come back home late at night to do your homework assignments, to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning as a child to go back to school. It was very, very tiring, but I thought it was okay because we were doing what was right. We were doing what Jehovah wanted us to do. You know, you have to make sacrifices to be a true Christian, you know, and if it's hard, if life is hard, that's how you know you're doing the right thing.
That's
what
how
they
you
tell
know you're doing the right thing, right? Why do we all have this mentality that
Yeah.
if things are really hard, I'm doing well? Or then the opposite is if things are going well for me, if things are working out for me,
Yeah.
I'm not being blessed. And if I'm being blessed, it's from dark sources. What? It's crazy. Crazy.
It's super crazy. And it's funny because the congregation that I grew up in, there were a lot of children in that congregation. It was mainly a mix of Africans and Haitians. And well, when both cultures come together, it can be kind of an explosion sometimes because both cultures are really, really hot. So a lot of the children that I grew up with in that congregation were they were double lifers because their parents weren't as strict with them about the whole JW stuff as my mom was. So when I got baptized at 11, it made the rest of them look bad. They didn't like me. They didn't like me before, and then they didn't like me after. I do have to admit on my end that I was very full of myself after getting baptized. I was puffed up with pride because they tell you, oh, you're doing such a good job. You're such a good example. You're this,
Yeah.
they shower you with praise, and it turns you into a bit of a narcissist, you know, where you can do no wrong. So I didn't understand.
We're also 11 years old, though. I mean, you find me one tween or teen who doesn't actually feel like the world revolves around them. I mean,
now I understand more because I know myself a little bit more. I really thought I had it going on. I thought the world revolved around me. And I really looked down on those kids that were living a double life. I looked down on them. And after getting baptized at 11, my mom was like, oh, this is great. You got baptized at a young age. Jehovah's Spirit is going to protect you going forward. That was not, I wouldn't say Jehovah's Spirit protected me because about 5 years after getting baptized at the age of 16, I started waking up. But at the time, I didn't know that I was waking up. Oh, but there were boys that I liked here and there in school. And
oh no, not boys. We can't have that. Every time I have a woman on my channel, it always goes back to, I mean, I did actually have a crush on a boy in high school. The scandal. Oh, crazy.
Yeah, no, I definitely had a crush on a few boys like in junior high school. One young man, we almost started dating, and then my mom put a stop to it because she saw that, she was like, oh no, this is the wrong path for you. And she was like, oh, I said a prayer to Jehovah that nobody else come into your life until, a brother comes and swoops you, like sweeps you off your feet or something like that. And so, yeah, it was kind of crazy. But what woke me up when I was 16, it wasn't the experiences that I was having in school. It wasn't the fact that I didn't fit in school. It was the fact that I didn't fit inside the Kingdom Hall. Between the age of 11 and 16, the French and the Creole circuit split. So basically, most of the Africans went to the French, and then most of the Haitian brothers and sisters went to the Haitian Creole circuit. So it left our congregation, much, much smaller. And that was when I started noticing the clique a little bit more. I was raised in the French congregation.
Oh, okay. Okay, wonderful.
So yeah, I started noticing the clique a little bit more. They were basically older sisters to me. I can say these were sisters that I could say were like 6 to 8 years older than me. They were the pioneers of the congregation. Most of them were Haitian that stayed in the French, young Haitians that stayed in the French. The older Haitians went to the Creole. The young Haitians, along with maybe a sprinkle of some African sisters, they started their own little clique. It was unofficial, but we all knew in the congregation that they were a clique. They were pioneers. They drove pretty much the same car. Every
Mhm.
time they took vacations, they went together. They were kind of bougie. They loved name brands. They were into, the good stuff. They were
Right.
materialistic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the shocking thing was one of the leaders of the clique was actually a Bethelite sister. Why is this happening? Like, how can a Bethelite be materialistic? There's something wrong with that. There's a disconnect. Like, I started getting a little bit depressed and then asking myself, I'm trying to, do right by Jehovah. I'm trying to live by Bible principles, but these people, life is going well for them and they're super materialistic, you know?
Plus, you're
They're
a
super,
teenager at this time.
yes,
You're
yeah,
easily influenced, and you're watching this happen by leaders, female leaders, supposedly in the congregation. So naturally, the fact that you went introspective and you're actually using your critical thinking skills as a young person,
yeah.
contrary to popular belief, is a fantastic thing and is very telling about you.
I thought it was just me. And I'm like, you know what?
Mhm.
On this side of the system of things, we're gonna have to deal with certain things. And that's okay. We just have to wait for us to, to get into the new world. Maybe Jehovah will fix everything in due time. And I would tell myself that, and I believed it. And another thing that shocked me at that age of 16 was that same Bethelite sister who was ahead of the clique. Her husband was like a spiritual father to me. Like, he literally took me, my brother, my sister under his wing. One day I caught him saying something just as materialistic as his wife. Actually, I was 16 when I met the man who would become my future husband.
Oh, you were
So,
young.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh.
around the same time as that was happening, there was this other Bethelite sister from a different congregation
Mhm.
who basically planned a group trip for us to upstate Walk Hill and Patterson,
Mhm.
where we visited all the Bethels. We stayed in a log cabin in the woods. The
Mhm.
brothers in one log cabin, the sisters in another log cabin.
Mhm.
And that was where I met the man who would soon become my husband. And the reason why I caught his eye was because there was a situation that happened there where this sister, who was like an aunt to me, she ended up slapping my brother, my younger brother, 3 times across the face, hard, in front of the entire group,
Oh my.
because she saw that he was getting berated and she kind of wanted to, participate. Because, there's this whole culture within the African culture that, like, it takes a village to raise a child. So when a kid is in trouble, everybody's against them. She slapped him like 3 times across the face.
How old
And
was your brother at the time?
if I was 16, then he must have been 14, because he's 2 years younger than me. Yeah, he was 14. And this was in front of everybody.
Right.
And I guess, that young man, he saw how I reacted and he was like, oh, I saw something in you that day. And I don't know, he must have thought that I was this super soft spoken person who, a lot of African men tend to like women that are not too outspoken, who don't talk a lot, who just stay behind them like this. And
Wow.
so I guess he must have seen that in me somehow. That weekend when we left, we got to the destination that we were going to drop everybody off in the Bronx. When I was saying goodbye to him, he pulled me in and he gave me a great big sloppy kiss on the cheeks. And I was extremely uncomfortable. And I will say now that I wasn't attracted to him from the very beginning, but nobody else was looking at me. I didn't have any prospects. So by the next year, when I was 17, we had already started talking. The way we would date is we would only talk to each other 2 days in the week at a certain time, because he was just so afraid that, like, getting closer or talking more would lead us to, like, the dreaded fornication.
You
You
know
know,
how many Jehovah's Witnesses marriages
yeah.
started out this way where you're like, shoot, we like each other, we're kind of dating, and then everybody finds out about it and it's, oh, well, now we got to get engaged. And then while you're engaged, you're basically married. It's just so like, whoa, like everyone is kind of making comments about your life, but ultimately you're not learning people skills. You're not given rites of passage and how to determine what kind of men or women, for the male viewers of this, that you even like. You don't know yourself well enough to even
Yeah.
know what you could bring to the table for a relationship. So this must have
Yeah.
been a lot for you. You're dating someone that you're not even really spending time with. Wow.
Not really, no. You know, it was really weird. And the warning signs were all there that we weren't a good match. A lot of men in West African culture aren't taught to be warm and affectionate to their wives because they're supposed to be men, you
Mhm.
know, they're not supposed to like show emotion, and it's a whole thing.
Well,
So
you
I
add then you add the layer of the organization onto that and how men
exactly,
are in
yeah,
charge.
the
And
misogyny.
you
Yeah,
were probably the classic subservient wife, not
yeah,
just because of African culture, but also because of JW culture as well. Double
yeah,
whammy.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. The warning signs were there, but we went ahead. We got engaged around November or December of the year that I turned 20. So that's when we got engaged. You know, he got down on his knee and he just said some random whatever. And I
Mhm.
still said yes.
But in all honesty, I don't know many Jehovah's Witness women who actually have said no, even when
Yeah.
the red flags were there, even when you knew this is just not right for me, because that's all we had was, well, I graduated from high school. I'm a regular pioneer. The next step is marriage. And
Yeah.
that's not spoken about enough. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, like I remember in high school telling my high school buddies, "Oh, you guys are gonna go off to college and I'm gonna get married." And they started
Mm.
laughing at me. They were like, "What are you doing? Why would you want to
Mhm.
like why would you want to do that?"
Yes.
And at the time it didn't click. I'm like, "Okay, whatever. You guys are insane system."
Mm.
In between the time that I graduated high school and I got married, I started college. I started college right after high school and I actually got into the dental hygiene program.
Good for
And I
you.
didn't, yeah, I didn't make it. I didn't
Oh.
make it because the support system wasn't there. One thing that I noticed with a lot of brothers and sisters from Haiti or from Africa, when their kids are in school, they support them because they know that, you know, even though the organization says no higher education, a lot of them kind of like close their eyes on that. They kind of like ignore it a little bit. They put their kids through school. And then after the kid gets their degree or whatever, then the kid starts pioneering, you know, or doing whatever they can for
That's
Jehovah.
actually refreshing. I gotta say, to hear something like that,
Yeah.
at least there are people who are going against the grain in that aspect.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that, but with my mother was more gung ho about it.
Mhm.
So when I started the dental hygiene program, she didn't understand that that had to be a priority. That had to become a priority.
Mm.
And when I would get home from school, she would give me endless tasks to do. She would give me endless chores. By the time I would get to bed, or by the time I would get to studying, it'll probably be like 11 p.m., midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I was drinking Red Bull every single day and going into class, and I was getting sick.
Mhm.
I failed out of the first semester of dental hygiene. To this day, and I'm not saying this to down my mother on a public platform, but the truth has to be told. And I'm kind of sick and tired of, you know, living my life to please others. You know, I have to speak my truth and
Yeah.
I need to heal, you know.
Yes. Good for you. And
So
that's why you came on this channel, to set the record straight. In pre-production, you also mentioned that people are kind of, the story they're telling themselves is not actually your story. So
yeah.
we're honored to have you on here and talk about what actually happened. So, and you're still so young. That's the interesting thing. You're still 25 and it's like you've lived the whole lifetime already. So,
Yeah.
so talk us through it then. So pioneering, you're now married to someone that you kind of don't love, or slowly waking up, and now what happens then?
Well, when we got married, not even a few weeks before we got married, I would say about 2 weeks, my mom started having a whole meltdown where she tried to get me to not do it. And I think it's
Really?
because she realized that because I would do a lot for her in the house. My siblings didn't really do much. I would be the only one to cook and clean and to help her out. And I guess she realized that she was going to miss that and that the house was going to fall apart when I left, which it did. Having a meltdown, and she was like, "Oh no, don't do it. You know, we can cancel the wedding." And, da, 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 da. And I told her, "Oh no, yeah, I love him." Lying, lying. I didn't love
Wow.
him. That wasn't love. That wasn't love. Let's be real. The day of the wedding arrived, not even the night before, I barely slept. And the next day I was telling myself, you know, I can learn to love him, you know, as long as we apply, you know, the principles that the governing body are teaching us, you know, what can go wrong? If we apply what we learn in the Bible, we'll be fine. You know,
So
we
you are
don't have
now ignoring your gut instinct that you do not love this person. Marriage is forever. They do not let you divorce easily
to, yeah,
unless somebody commits some kind of made up sin.
yeah.
And you're still gaslighting yourself on your wedding day.
Yes, I was telling myself that.
Wow.
And I was crying down the aisle on my wedding day. And my mom was crying, you know, while waiting in line with, because she was my maid of honor, in line with my
Oh, that's
husband. I
sweet.
was crying because I was losing the old life that I had. I
Mhm.
was giving it up for a whole new something, and I didn't even know what I was going into. And
Mhm.
as a side note, before I got married, basically there were sisters in his congregation that helped us to set up the wedding. We ended up renting a community center. You know, it was like a community center kind of wedding with the congregation cooking. It was like a mix of African and Haitian foods, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So during the wedding prep, I was alone with one of the sisters that was helping us prep. And I told her, thank you so much for all your help. We really appreciate it and everything. And I always knew, like this particular sister, I had gone to pioneer school with her, and I always knew like there was just something that she didn't like about me. She's the kind of person, she really just can't hide it if she doesn't like you, but she'll do what she has to do if you have privileges to make herself look good.
Okay.
And her husband was an elder. So that's another thing.
Mm.
So, I was like, thank you so much for everything and for all your help. And she was like, oh, Laura, yeah, we're not doing this for you. We're doing this because we love the person you're marrying and we want you to treat him well. This was told to me a few weeks before my wedding, that they weren't doing it for me. They were doing it because they loved him and they wanted me to treat him well. So therefore, that statement that she said has
Mhm.
been playing in my mind for the 4 years that I was married. Because while I started going through hardship, nobody really cared about me. All they cared about was how I was treating him,
Mm.
not about how he was treating me.
Do you think anyone would
Um,
have listened?
See, that's where it kind of goes into how my life was after the wedding. After the wedding, we settled into life. I started a new job, new congregation, new everything. I had to leave
Yeah.
everything behind to join his congregation. The first problem that arose was I told him most couples, when they get married, they move to a new congregation so that neither one of the spouses feels at odds. Because sometimes if you go into a congregation that knows the man, they will mistreat the woman because they're kind of jealous that there's someone new coming in, to replace whatever relationship they had with that person. Same
Mhm.
thing with the woman. If he had joined my congregation, maybe the people wouldn't have treated him that great either because they would have seen him as an outsider.
Mhm.
So he was like,
Or they
no,
see you both as children, not grown
yeah,
adults.
yeah,
Right.
that as well. That as
Right.
well. We ended up staying in that congregation because he told me that no, he was attached and that this was something that should have been discussed before, and that no, he's not going to do it because he was attached to that congregation and that was that. And then there was the other problem that came up, which was he would work at night so that he could pioneer during the day. Our marriage, it took a back burner to a lot of the things in his life. He was not ready to put aside his life as a single man to fully take on the responsibility of a husband, you
But did
know?
he have privileges in the congregation at this point?
Yeah, he was already a ministerial servant when we had married and I was a pioneer.
Mm.
So, he didn't want to put anything aside. He just kept working at night. What do I look like? A young 21-year-old girl, married. My, husband works at night.
Mhm.
What else can I say? Does it get any lonelier than that?
Lonely.
And I left my entire life aside for that.
Mm.
And I
So he was
just
a
felt,
slave for the congregation, and that's okay. A slave for other people, and that's okay.
yeah,
But focusing on you being newlyweds, foreign
yeah,
to him.
that time was never given to us at all. And then I started going out in service with some of the sisters in the congregation, and due to my schedule, I was stuck with the same group of sisters every time. Go to work, go in service, and
Mhm.
then come home, get
Mhm.
everything ready for the next day, start over again. There
Mhm.
wasn't a break, and I also started burning out. The
Mhm.
sisters in the evening group made me, not all of them, but they made me feel like an outcast.
Mhm.
And there was this young one, especially, who was closer to me in age. And she would always talk to me about things that she did with my husband before me and him married and stuff like that. I don't know what she wanted to get out of that, you
Mhm.
know? And I genuinely, I didn't understand why that was happening. So I would go home to my husband, tell him, this is what happened. This is what this girl is telling me. And, I was having constant problems because they were making me feel like an outcast. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel welcome, nothing like that.
You're the
And
second
so
person coming on this channel talking about how there was no love in the congregation, and yet that is number
initially,
one. It's like especially people with
Yeah.
You're told who your friends are going to be. You're told
Yeah.
these are going to be your friends. These are the people you're going to be pioneering with. Deal with it.
Like
And
initially from the jump,
mhm.
there wasn't any love because I was new. They didn't know me. There were eyes of suspicion. The congregation was mainly single sisters, and
Mm.
they're all pretending that they don't want to get married, for some reason. But after a certain
Okay.
age, if they haven't found somebody, they begin telling themselves, "Oh, I'm fine being single."
Right.
I'm
Right.
in the AAA club, available after Armageddon, and in my mind, I'm just like,
Wait, I've never heard that before.
so I'm just like, it's okay to have a natural desire to want a So I'm just like, it's okay to have a natural desire to want a partner, but most of them
Right.
don't have a lot of prospects. So they tell themselves that. But
Right.
yeah, I did get bullied and I went home crying and he stood up for the sisters. He stood up for them and he didn't believe me that I was really going through something. And basically, most of our marriage was, let's say some issue arrived with some sister. A lot of the sisters have insecurity, jealousy issues, along with narcissism, because there's the witness thing that's telling them that they're so much
Right.
better than people.
Things feel out of control. We tend to try and control what we can. And sometimes it looks like controlling other people. It looks like controlling our appearance and the image of perfectionism. It looks like a lot of things, especially for the women. We are not in control of, we have no autonomy. We're not even really in control of our own bodies. So
Yeah,
it comes
exactly.
out somewhere. And it's
Yeah,
usually in our behaviors and how we treat each other. That's how it's
yeah.
exhibited. Now you don't feel safe. You don't feel safe in the Kingdom Hall. You don't feel safe
No,
with
I
your
definitely,
husband.
I definitely didn't. And then shortly after that, my husband got appointed elder. And then all of a sudden, I had newfound friends.
You're already kind of, if I may be so bold to say, in a loveless marriage.
Yeah.
Now he gets appointed to be an elder, and now you, by default, have to be an elder's wife and put
Yeah.
on this image of being an elder's wife with all these
Exactly.
expectations.
And then there was a sister who was an elder's wife at the time, and she was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, we elders' wives, we stick together,"
Oh,
because they were their own little, their own little thing. It would always be them that would plan gatherings. It would always be them that would plan random stuff, you know, clicky, but it's God's organization, so you have to close your eyes on it. All of a sudden, I had newfound friends. People who didn't look twice at me before, who were looking at me, side eyeing me any kind of way, were coming out to me. I was all of a sudden getting invited to places. People that didn't want to be my friend before were all of a sudden my friend. And it's funny because sometimes when people do that in the organization, I ask myself, like, are you thinking properly? Because you didn't like me before. You really think that I'm going to think that you're being sincere? I played along.
but it's
I think,
amazing that you thought of that, though. A lot of people, myself included, don't even realize it because
yeah,
we don't really pick up on it. We're just in this mindless
yeah,
conveyor belt of thought
yeah.
where we don't pick up
And
on
it
it,
would
but
always
you did. It's amazing.
put me at odds with my ex-husband. And in my mind, I'm just like, I'm not negative. I see things for what they are.
Well, you're not negative, you're describing things. There's a difference, right?
Yeah. So
Describing how
when
you feel about things. Now, Pioneer Elder's wife, you have
yeah,
already broken up a couple years ago. So we were essentially PMO, if that would describe you.
yeah,
And
I started to be chemo early on, and I didn't even know that I was chemo. We would always get invitations, and I would know that it would be because of my ex-husband. It's not because they like me. So many people, we would get invited to places, and I could tell that they did not really genuinely like me. They only were there because of my ex-husband. This was right before the pandemic hit. The year before the pandemic was 2019, I believe.
Mhm.
2019, we got, two Bethelite couples in our Kingdom Hall. Lovely people. However, one of the couples, I could tell that she didn't really feel comfortable around me for some weird reason. A lot of people were like that around me. And I honestly think it has to do with their own insecurities. Like, you know, I liked to dress up a lot. I still like to dress up,
Well,
I
you were
put
from
on
New
makeup.
York too. I mean, I'm from Jersey, and that's what we did in the tri.
Yeah,
We got dressed up, but not
yeah.
too. You
Like,
can't get dressed. You can't dress
yeah,
up too much. You can't be too much of a woman. But you're
yeah,
also
yeah.
not enough. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I feel like maybe it got under their skin that I would always be the dressiest person there for the most part. Sometimes I wasn't, and you know what? That was okay. Like I'm not the kind of person who gets put down by somebody else's shine. When somebody else is shining, someone someone looks beautiful, someone looks gorgeous, it doesn't take away from me.
Well, that's the hallmark of someone who's actually emotionally healthy. I've never had
Absolutely.
someone on the channel who has the perspective of being the wife of an elder and all the intricacies that go on with that.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And I remember one day I was talking to her husband, that sister, that Beth the Life sister's husband, about something. I think it had to do with like field service reports or something. And she was on the other side of the hall. This was after the meeting. I wasn't even talking to him for 2 seconds and she popped up beside him. And I was like, oh, snap. She popped up beside him. And I'm like, wow, do you really think I'm going to like steal your husband or something? Like, do
No.
I see the ring on my finger?
Yeah, there was a lot of that too. When I was in the Spanish congregation, it was a lot of yeah, I just had to keep my mouth shut. I had to dress a
Yeah.
certain way, behave a certain way, because
Mhm.
my very existence in some of these rooms was offensive to people. So hey, you know
Yeah.
what? Now I decide I have t-shirts that say I am mildly offensive. That way people can just know when I enter the room, yes, you're probably going to be offended by something I do, by something I say, by the way that I walk, you're probably going to be offended.
Early 2020, we planned a trip to West Africa, to our country. Oh, I didn't mention, but he was Togolese as well, but he was born there. And so we planned the trip back home to visit the family. And it was around that time that I really started feeling burnt out because our life was so busy. And every time I wanted to sleep in on a Saturday, it would be a problem for him because he'll say things like, you're an elder's wife. You should always be at the group. You should be an example. So my life was very, very tough.
Wow.
My
Wow.
life, I started feeling like I was going to burn out. And
Mm.
for some weird reason, early 2020, before we left for our trip to Africa, I just felt like something is about to change, something huge. I don't know what it is, but something's about to change in my life. We went to Africa. We stayed with his family for 2 weeks, and I saw how his father treated his mother. And I kind of began to understand why he treated me, the way he did.
Are they
You know,
witnesses?
yeah,
Okay. Mhm.
yeah, but the misogyny is still there. They oppress
Of
their
course.
women like
Of course.
there's no tomorrow. He was very emotionally abusive and he made me feel like I could not trust myself. Every time something happened, like I said with the whole sisters thing, the reason why I was delving into those stories is because every time he would hear about it, he would act like it was all in my head.
So take us to the point where you disassociated, what that looked like for you. And then I want to talk a little bit about the healing process and how life is for you now.
I woke up with the whole problems in my marriage. And, I tried to get us help. And one thing that kept happening was I kept getting counseled and he wasn't. And that's when I started waking up and I'm like, something's wrong here. There's something about this religion that I need to find out about. So during our regional convention of 2020, we were watching it in two separate rooms and I was watching apostate videos instead.
No.
So,
Oh no.
I was watching the videos instead and I woke up. I woke up very, very quickly. By December 2020, with the ups and downs, I was fully awake. I was fully awake and I had a decision to make. And that decision was either I stay in as a teenie or I get out, I get a divorce, all of it, the whole 9 years, everything. And I was going to stay, quite honestly, for his family because I really did love his family. I loved his, as many, little nuances there were with his family. I really did genuinely love his father, his mother, and his brother. And I was going to stay for them. What got me to not was that he kind of destroyed my reputation in front of them. And I didn't feel like I had anything left. And my own family turned their backs on me once they realized that I had woken up. Once they realized that I had woken up, they called him and told him. And the situation at home got even worse for me. And I had to start planning my escape. And the funny thing is, my father, who they vilified while I was a teenager, I called him in January of 2021, this year. I called him this year for the first time in 10 years. We had an honest conversation where I told him that I didn't want to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. And he could not sleep that night. He could not sleep that night. He was
He
just
had you back. He got you back.
yeah.
My dad did the same thing.
Yeah, he was so happy to have me back and he couldn't believe it. So my escape, I started looking for rooms. I was working, and I had to look for rooms. I had to get roommates. I had to set myself up, get a new laptop because there was this
So
thing.
you disassociated before you
No,
escaped,
I
or did you
planned
get
my
some kind of an exit strategy?
No, I read Lloyd Evans' How to Escape Jehovah's Witnesses. I
Mhm.
also read Amber Scora's Leaving the Witness. Oh
Great
my
book.
God, it made me cry. It was
Yeah,
so
Amber was a
good.
big part of my waking up too. And I listened to her TED Talk. She's
Yes,
fantastic.
I read those books. I
Read the
planned
book.
my escape. I made sure that I had enough money to survive on the outside
Mhm.
because they say that when you're on the outside, Satan's world is going to chew you up and spit you out. When the reality is, the organization sets you up for failure. They want you to fail. That's why they want to make sure that you don't get an education. They want to
Right,
make sure that you don't have enough money. They want to make sure you don't have friends outside. That way you
right.
will come running back, even if you don't believe. So
Mhm.
that's very, very important. You need to make sure that you have enough money. You need to make sure that you have a place to go. You have a job.
Mhm.
You need to make sure that there is a way for you to change around your contact information so that witnesses don't harass you and guilt trip you into coming back, because that's what they did to me. And I had to change my number. You know,
Mhm.
they kept, I wouldn't say harassing, they were trying to quote unquote encourage me. But
Right.
at some point, it began to feel like too much because I didn't believe anymore. And what they were saying about Satan's world and what I was seeing were two different things. Yes, the world is evil. You know, everywhere you go, there's good, there's bad people. You know,
Mhm.
you make the best of life.
That's
You
what you
know,
focus on. But they
yeah,
they 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 make you very fearful
yeah.
of a world, the very world that they throw you
Yeah.
out into.
The preparation to leave came first.
Mm.
So after everything fell through, I found a room. I moved out. I stopped going to all the meetings. The very same week I moved out, that was my last meeting. I have not gone to a single Jehovah's Witness meeting ever since.
Did you know
Um,
that you were going to leave the marriage right when you were leaving the religion, or did you think maybe I could be married to a Pimi elder and be out at the same time, or did you know that he was not going to accept that?
uh, that's a really, really hard thing. I kept telling myself that if we were able to make it work, maybe I could go back to him and then I'll just be a wife that's not in the organization and he'll
Right,
just, like if we could work it out. But when we left, we were just still arguing about the same thing. And things
right, right.
weren't
Even as
ending
a
the way.
even as a Pimi wife, it wasn't right.
Yeah,
So I see.
it
Mhm.
was the same problems and it all revolved around me doing what he wanted, as opposed
Mhm.
to both of us bending,
Right,
both of us folding, meeting each other halfway. it
right,
wasn't it wasn't like that. So
right.
I ended up finally deciding to disassociate in August. I moved out in May, a few weeks before our fourth wedding anniversary. So
Wow.
on our wedding anniversary, there was this elder in the congregation who knew that we were already separated. And he still sent us a happy anniversary text.
Aw.
And yeah, ever since I left in May, they were trying to get in touch with me, trying to call me. Some witnesses could reach me, some couldn't. I
Mm.
ended up changing my number. I ended up blocking a lot of people. Basically, I had to shun them before they shunned me
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I had to tell myself, you know what, I'm not living my life for these people anymore. I can't. There were many people who knew that I was suffering, but they were still trying to get us back together. And
Right.
it didn't make sense because the way the marriage was, it wasn't godly. There
Right.
was nothing holy or spiritual or cute or loving about that.
Right.
Two people that are incompatible should just not be together,
Right.
no amount of
Right.
Bible is gonna keep that happening. So I had to tell myself, look, I have to live for myself. I have to
Mm.
take a stand for what I know is right, what I know this organization to be. I married this man when I was indoctrinated. I'm trying really, really hard to forgive myself for marrying him because I was indoctrinated. I really thought that with Jehovah's help, we would make it work. And
Right.
then it just fell apart. It
Mhm.
fell apart. So I had to do a lot of work internally to help myself to heal. I'm still in the healing process. I still have a lot of pain in my heart.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, after sufficient time has passed from May to August, I finally sent in my disassociation letter.
They set you up for failure to get out of a marriage. Abuse is not grounds. None of this is grounds. But for a lot of people,
Mhm.
committing that act with someone that, just to get out of a marriage,
Yeah.
it really could be re-traumatizing ourselves when things like that happen. I'm so sorry you experienced that.
Yeah, he completely changed after I disassociated. He just changed for the worse.
And
He changed
now
for
that
the worse.
that you guys are getting divorced, he's still an elder, right?
I'm not sure what happened.
Okay.
He never spoke on it, and he would never talk about anything quote unquote spiritual with me because I left Jehovah and I'm so sinful. And he always thought he was better than me anyways.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if now it despite everything you endured being married to someone like that, he still comes out looking squeaky clean
Yeah, no,
because you're the
he
apostate crazy ex-wife.
yeah, yeah, no. He's definitely going to come out looking squeaky clean because from the jump, the congregation loved him. They didn't love me. There were, a few here and there who did genuinely care about me, but overall, they loved him, and they wanted me to treat him well. I'm supposed to just lie there and let him step all over me. And
It's
I was,
amazing what happens when we wake up as women, right? It's amazing where it's just you and you know what? Not even gender specific. We step into who we were meant to be as human beings, right? And sure, it's a process and it takes a long time, but I love how you said it. I got married while I was indoctrinated, and marriage, just like baptism, are huge decisions that,
yeah,
which for most of us, we make these decisions while we're under coercive control. And you wake up from that control and you realize big decisions that you made that are so impactful on your life were not decisions you would have otherwise made.
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So I had to do a lot of work internally. I have done my best. I have tried really, really hard to just be as kind and to just be as respectful as possible because I'm trying to remind myself that he is a victim as well. He is
Right.
indoctrinated. He is being lied to,
Mhm.
and he doesn't know it.
Mhm.
And I genuinely do wish him the best, whatever may come his way. I hope he wakes up and I hope
Mhm.
he becomes a better person. I genuinely do wish him well.
If you
Yeah.
can speak to your 18 or 19-year-old self, what would you say to her? Because I know she's in the audience right now.
Well, to my 18 or 19-year-old self, your parents are not your everything. When you believe some of them may be there for you, some of them may not be there for you. The parents that are truly indoctrinated will act like they love you to death. And then the minute you stop believing and you have a little doubt, it becomes a complete problem and your life gets flipped upside down. Your parents are not your everything. You don't owe them anything.
Mm.
You were put on this planet to live your life for you. And if you believe in God, I believe in God. You
Mhm.
know, God didn't put you on this planet to live for your parents. Their
Mhm.
time has passed. You have to live for yourself, you know? And, there's going to be ups and downs, but you're going to be just fine. Set
Mhm.
yourself up financially.
Mhm.
Make friends outside. That's something I forgot to mention because I did make friends outside. That's what helped me. It was one of the friends that I made outside that helped me to move out.
And if you could
So,
speak to that young wife who's dealing with abusive behaviors, or that
yeah,
young husband dealing with abusive behaviors,
yeah.
what advice would you give to the newlywed, to the new bride who realized, oh boy, not only am I in high control religion, but now I'm in a narcissistic marriage? What would you say to her? What would be your first thing to say to her?
You don't have to stay.
Mm.
It's not your fault that you were blind when you got into this. You know, you were blind when you got into this. It's not your fault. There's always a window, a door, a crack. There's always a way out.
Mhm.
It's all about thinking of the possibilities. And it's all about also numbing yourself a little bit because you're going to lose a lot. Prepare yourself for that. Prepare yourself mentally so that it doesn't hit you like a rocket when you lose everything and everyone you've ever cared about. But life gets better because you will find new people to replace exactly as many, even more than what you've lost.
It's interesting when you say that because for me, I mean, not everybody was bad or toxic. Not everything is all bad or all good. But I will say, I would never, ever have been in this body with this mind if I didn't take decisive action like I did. And I'm sure you can speak to that as well. Would you agree that, sure, it's a hard decision to wake up and change and uproot your life and make all these big decisions. And to other people, I'm sure it looks a little nutty. For me, it was, what is Wendy doing? Why is she making such crazy decisions? Is she having a mental breakdown? Because I was very contemplative and I would think and I would deliberate and I didn't let anybody know what was going on in my life. Sure, I was very public, but I was calculatively public. I curate what I talk about on social media. It's not actually color and consistency. That's how you do it. But I would make decisions that outwardly appeared a little bit impulsive or what is she doing? And interestingly, now that you've made these choices for yourself, what does life look like for you? Because now you're on the other end, right? You're on the other side of something that was really, really difficult that a lot of people in our audience are dealing with at this very moment. What does life look like for you now?
Some days are still a little sad, but I'm not as down as I was when I initially left. I'm so happy and I'm so grateful to have woken up. Oh my God. Every day, I wake up every day with so much freedom. I'm sorry, I'm crying a little bit.
No, it's great.
I wake up every day with so much freedom and so much happiness in my heart. Like I really, I thank the universe. I thank God for waking me up and getting me out of there. I lost a lot. I lost my mom's side of the family, the only side of the family that I've ever really known. But I have my dad. I have my sister. I have two sisters, by the way. There's a half sister that I'm finally getting to know better. I'm going to school. The possibilities are endless. Life is amazing. Just give it a chance. You're gonna be all right.
Oh my gosh, what a beautiful ending to a story that I'm sure so many people can relate to. If anything Laura has said resonates with you and you would like to reach out with her, all of her information is in the description box. Laura, thank you so much for coming on our channel. And we would love to have you back because I know that in a couple of weeks, we do get actually people who say, thank you for having that particular guest, because then what happens is there's conversations that happen off the channel where they're like, hey, this person is going through what I'm going through. And that is why just thank you so much for speaking out, not just about cultural differences that I don't think a lot of us are aware of, to be completely honest with you, but also what actually does happen as an elder's wife in a toxic marriage and leaving the religion all at once. Quick question. Do you see that there is a correlation between a toxic marriage and the organization as it pertains to narcissism?
Yes. Because even though the information in the articles sometimes can be seemingly neutral, it always places, like sometimes there'll be in a paragraph, it will say something like, oh, the end result, the end decision falls on the husband and the wife must comply. Subtle little sentences like that do make it hard for men to know that they need to be humble, that it takes two people to make a couple, and that the world doesn't evolve around them,
But as girls, we were groomed.
Yeah.
We were groomed to be wives from young ages. Like we were taught and it's not anything you could read in the literature. It's the subtleties. We're taught you're going to be that wife. He's on the end seat. You're on the end seat. He's got the briefcase on the end. He is in charge. And by extension, every man is in charge. By extension. So yes, it's the subtleties. And so look at you now. You're shiny, you're bright, you're beautiful. We're so excited to have you here. We will have you back. We'll have a Where Is She Now update maybe in a couple months or so. We'll check in on you. Okay.
All right. That sounds great. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Of course. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to reach out to Laura if you find yourself in her story. It has been so amazing since we have guests on our show that they then help other people too. So this is kind of what we're doing. It's a program, it's a community. And if you want to be on the show, if you want to share your story, please email me at wendyrenee@gmail.com, or you can go to wendyrenee.com and click on the Share Your Story tab and the scheduler will pop up. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.